Hi, my name is Rahul. Today we discussed the recently announced budget by the finance minister in India, and as you see that the budget was with great expectation both from industry as well as from public at large. And this budget attained significant importance as this is the last budget of this government before the election, and this is the first budget after introduction of GST. Given these two clear important aspects, all the eyes were keen to look at how finance minister is going to balance the fiscal deficit and balance the requirement and expectation of industry on one hand and the inclusion and the welfare programs on other. The announcements in the budget clearly show that the finance minister needed to then make a choice. One, he made a choice not to breach the fiscal discipline too much and therefore retain the fiscal deficit on a budgeted level of 3.3% of the GDP. That was a choice which to my mind was a great choice to make, even though it might disappoint some factors or some factions of the society that he could have allocated more money. The second choice that he made was that to make the tax competitive in India versus to make the businesses in such a manner that more demand is generated. So he made another choice that we would not so much follow the tax competition, we would rather follow and put our resources behind creating the demand, which would in turn spur and motivate the industry to make the investment. And this perhaps came from the background of the statistical research that was done last couple of months, which clearly showed that the industry capacity utilization currently is about 70% plus minus, and therefore there is still a capacity available with industry, and therefore the new investment is not coming up, and the needed new investment would come therefore only when you create additional demand. So the massive outlay on the rural agriculture and infrastructure sector of over 15 lakhs crores is one which would generate the new cycle of demand by spend that would happen from the government as well as from the private industry in regard to those projects. So on one hand it makes good political sense to make the investment in the rural, the social sector and in the infrastructure sector. On the other hand, it makes sense that you are incentivizing industry to an extent that you're creating the demand which is fundamental for industries to grow rather than devoting the resource for the tax competition. So though the case for the tax competition was becoming more compelling after what we saw has happened in UK and then now in US in terms of reduction of tax rate, but in India we need to still remain content with the corporate tax rate as it was before, and though little bit increase because the cess got increased from 3% to 4%, which pushes up a bit the corporate tax rate for all corporates, but for the smaller industries and for small corporates which are defined to be corporates having turnover of less than 250 crores, the tax rate is reduced to 25%. So this section of the corporates where the tax rate is less than 25% and turnover is less than 250 crores constitutes about 99% of the total companies which pay taxes here in India. So the tax rate reduction promise has been kept for a section of the industry. It is not applied wide to all the industries. There is no incentive announced separately for creating the capital investment or investment in the businesses, because it is considered that the business would make investment if the capacity utilization goes up, and to make that happen, let's invest in creating more demand. On the other hand, if you look at the individual tax, in the last two budgets, the slabs were calibrated, the tax incentives were reasonably calibrated, and in this budget, the finance minister took some time to explain as to how he is looking at any intervention or changes in the individual tax rates. and he went and took pains to explain that of the over 1.75 crores taxpayer, a group of taxpayers who pay the taxes out of salary income and another group of the similar size who pay the taxes out of business income, and he found that the per person tax in the business group was about 25,000 crores and per person tax in the salaried group was about 75,000 crores. And that's how he found the focus group which needed an intervention and allowed a 40,000 rupees standard deduction for salaried people, albeit he subsumed in this the allowance for medical as well as allowance for transport. So marginally it results in a additional deduction of about 15 to 16,000 rupees per annum per individual in salaried class, but that is one small intervention where he, with a very targeted group, attempted to give some incentive. The other target group which was very apparent was senior citizen group, where both to secure the income of senior citizens, the assured LIC scheme, the limit was increased, the deduction for the medical expenses have been increased, and the deduction from medical insurance has been increased. So overall, if you look at it, the philosophy of the budget has continued to remain focused on increasing and enhancing and making more robust the fundamentals of economy by creating the demand rather than participate in the tax reduction or tax incentive to spur or motivate people to make investment. So I would think that this was a good choice to make, and particularly in light of the fact that we did not breach too much the fiscal deficit target, capping it at 3.3.